Hello, everyone. This is W, host of the High Art on the Edge page, host of two podcast features. The first one is known as PCE, which stands for Post-Concert Energy, and the one you're listening to right now is called Surprise Cast. In this engaging discussion, I sit down with photographer, film writer Jonathan Rach to explore the worlds of music, photography, personal identity, and the creative process. We talk about the exhilarating experience of attending 9 Inch Nails shows, the details of stage design for the 9 Inch Nails Self-Destruct tour, and the vital role of collaboration. Jonathan offers keen insights on photography, including the value of mistakes and the importance of capturing the decisive moment. The conversation also covers his work with legendary artists such as David Bowie, upcoming projects, including potential exhibitions, and maybe a photography book. After speaking with him, I realized several things. He is thoughtful, contemplative, and passionate about his work. Things just seem to click with him. Grab yourself a nice drink, have a seat on a comfortable couch or chair, and enjoy my conversation with Jonathan, a true gentleman who understands the small and big picture of life. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. You know, I have to tell you, my parents grew up in Pennsylvania, went to Penn State, got married, moved to the Bay Area. Tell the listeners, Jonathan, what is it about Pennsylvania that people are drawn to?
I can tell you what makes them leave.
We could do that too.
I'm more experienced in that category since I was born here, and I did leave, but I did come back. I think what people find attractive about this area is the first word that comes to mind would be just, sort of the laid back. You're just going to be at a different pace and things are more affordable. It almost feels like you're just kind of stepped out and you're letting the rest of it just kind of pass you by. That would be my take.
Okay, so let's contrast that with your experience in Los Angeles, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us the difference between Pittsburgh and Los Angeles in terms of art and that kind of culture.
Well, first off, an interesting aspect when we were growing up here, Cleveland, Ohio, from Pittsburgh, I should say from where I grew up, which was southwest of Pittsburgh a little bit, was 2.5-hour drive from where we're in Pennsylvania to Cleveland. And the thought of driving to Cleveland seemed like going to like another country, another world. 2.5 hours. Are you kidding me? Los Angeles at rush hour from one end of the city to the other is 2.5 hours. So that's the scale difference. I remember when I got to Los Angeles, I kept thinking like, where are the woods? Because I had woods in my backyard. You drive to, 2 blocks. The grocery store has woods behind it. You're just in the mountains. This part of Pennsylvania is all mountains, coal mountains. That's why Pittsburgh and steel and all the coal mines, they were pulling all that out of these mountains. My grandfather's from Italy, so he was looking for work, turn of the century. He came here because there was work in the coal mines and the steel mills. That's the reason why the population grew here, was because of all those resources that they were pulling out of the ground and stuff like that. Los Angeles, it feels like when you go there, it's just like this is where all the insane people come from every corner of the world. Everything's in Los Angeles, you name it. It's just from A to Z, every color there is. It's just it's everything. It's vast. It's huge. It's sprawling. It's got oceans. It's got mountains. It's got desert close by. It's got Las Vegas. It's got Mexico. It's got San Francisco close by. I mean, it's alive, and it's also extremely costly. It's expensive. It's a little bit of a mess. It seems like it's not organized, like nobody planned out that city, traffic everywhere. But it, you're gonna just bump into anything and everything you want to bump into out there. So
Yeah, I've heard that from other artists, and there was actually a song written by Woody Guthrie, sung by Pete Seeger, and there's a little lyric from that song, and it says, "All I do is cough and choke from the iron fillings and the sulfur smoke in Pittsburgh. Lord God, Pittsburgh."
I like that.
So let us retrace some steps. Speaking of community.
Okay.
And I want to read something to you. This is by a great book called Lynch on Lynch. And it was written and edited by Chris Rodley. And it's an interview with David that kind of focuses on his career as a director. So let me read this to you, and I would love to get your take.
Okay.
So Chris is talking to David, and he says, "When you were a child, your family moved regularly from town to town, state to state. How did you feel about that very transient lifestyle?" David Lynch says, "Yeah, it's good and bad, because you all kind of get dug in one place. And then suddenly you're someplace else. You've got to make new friends. You got to get the lay of the land. It's very good for some kids. Yeah, they develop a skill for getting along. But for other kids, it destroys them. But as parents, you don't know what kind of kids you have. You just have to move." And then Chris says, "Well, what kind of a kid were you?" And David says, "I got the drill down pretty good. I could feel what needed to be done to get along. And then once you get in, then you can do whatever you want to do. But it's really hard if you're on the outside. It forces you to want to get on the inside. And that takes lots of time. And so you don't know what you should be doing." So here's my question for you, Jonathan. What kind of a kid were you whilst growing up?
Well, in that scenario, I used to fantasize about my family moving from city to city, and we never did. So I would have probably enjoyed that. Yeah, I always felt like there wasn't enough action stirred up in the situation. So I would have been the kid that would have excelled in that environment.
Why?
Yeah. I don't have an attachment to identity.
Because?
Because I didn't find one that I liked in the beginning. I was free kind of to be and define myself in whatever way I wanted to. So obviously if you're moving from city to city and starting new friends every time, that's a lot easier to do, is to redefine yourself every time you went into a new group of kids. So I think I would have excelled in that environment. And some of that I think played well into my occupation as someone who does get placed inside of the nucleus of a little intense community, family nucleus, and then you have to figure out how to fit in. I mean, I've been placed in, the Nine Inch Nails world, the David Bowie world, the Axl Rose world, the Lollapalooza, the Warped Tour, and every time you're placed in there, because you're there to document, you really have to adjust a little bit and be flexible with how you're coming across. And so that's an identity thing. Like if you're pretty open to like express and explain yourself and come across to others and not be attached to a certain identity, that works well for that part of the occupation. And I would imagine actors, very successful actors, have the ability to just dump the identity and take on a new persona and really, feel it and become that. And yeah, so.
Okay, so let's stick on that notion of identity because I think that's a very important one.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, my parents, born and raised in Pennsylvania, went to Penn State. My dad's identity was developed pretty much on his own when he moved out at the age of 18. My mom's was more so in her college experiences. So tell the listeners and me, Jonathan, if you don't mind, what were the identities like for your parents in terms of profession, occupation, community work?
Yeah, one side, my dad's side was business and my mom's side was family. That could either work in harmony or be in friction, and probably obviously both. But yeah, my dad was more from an Irish German family and a little bit of Cherokee, and that was a business family. And my mom's Italian, and that was a big Italian family. So yeah, so I remember the Italian side would say, they don't sit down at the table to have dinner? Like, what's the deal here? They just take their plates into the living room? Yeah. And then the business side would be like, who has time to sit down at the dinner table? It's like, so yeah.
So who are you most like, mom or dad?
Well, I have an identity that bobs and weaves, bob and weave. So I probably don't want either one. So that's now the identity is like open to be whatever you want it to be. So I did reject both when I was a kid, and I felt like I had no role models. But I would definitely gravitate towards my mom's side because my mom was the one that was there and my dad was never around, kind of thing, always working. So how about what do you, just out of curiosity, what are your parents? Are they?
So I'm adopted.
Oh,
From both.
interesting.
From both.
I used to fantasize about that too. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, now we can get a whole nother discussion. My parents, when they moved to California,
Right.
from New Hope, is it New Hope? No, Happy Valley.
Is that okay? Are you on the east side of Pennsylvania?
I believe my parents were.
Okay.
So when they came to California, my dad worked for Booz Allen, and they decided they'd like to adopt. They adopted me from Bogota, Colombia.
Ah, interesting.
My other brothers here in the Bay Area, and my youngest brother, he's from Bangkok, Thailand.
Wow.
And the reason why I'm letting you know that is because that's going to come up later,
right,
in our conversation when we get to 9 Inch Nails, and I'll explain why. So, with that in mind, and thank you for sharing more about your mom and your dad and perhaps this identity that you wanted to seek on your own. You remind me of this person I'm actually going to read about. Her name is Sinead O'Connor.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to read a passage to you from this book that she wrote called Rememberings, a wonderful, powerful, visceral book. Here it goes. She's talking about her aunt, Frances. She's 16, and I'm 6. She has Down syndrome. She lives all week in a care home on the Navan Road with the nuns because my granny and grandfather are too old to look after her properly. But she comes home every weekend, and I love her. She's like a big walking heart. She loves everything and everyone. She hasn't any badness in her, only good. I want you to tell me, Jonathan, was there anybody during your childhood that you kind of feel the same way or felt the same way as Sinead did for her aunt? Someone that you greatly admired and respected, that you kind of looked up to?
Well, those are two different things.
Okay.
They shouldn't be. But again, you're talking about a kid, talking about me younger, not wanting to have the identity of anybody in my family or anything. But when you say that, like, she only has good, not evil, we could maybe take the leap to the idea of something that's unconditional, right? So I'm going to just love, and there's no strings attached. I'm just here to love, right? You could say I don't have the other thing in me, or I do, but I chose not to. With you, it's just unconditional. So I did feel unconditional love from my mom.
Okay.
But I did not admire and respect her when I was a teenager and in my 20s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, did you know that at the time? Were you very consciously aware that you were fighting that duality?
Yeah, that tore me up. When somebody loves you unconditionally and yet you want nothing to do with it is a pretty awful place to be.
In the rearview mirror, if you could go back in time, would you still hold that sentiment, or would you change things?
Yeah, I would absolutely not hold that sentiment. That was an underdeveloped brain that had no appreciation. Yeah, I had to learn many things to get to a place where first that I even understood that how lucky I was to have unconditional love. You take that for granted and you just throw it away. You just think that every parent is going to, look at you. You're a prime situation. Do you know your original parents? Do you know it all or nothing? So you don't know if it's tragedy or they just didn't want the child, or you have no idea.
No idea.
Does that question hover at the surface for you a lot, or is it something that you're not struggling with or never struggled with, or?
So at this juncture in my life, I don't worry about it. During my teenage, more volatile years and in my 20s, I was very conscious and cognizant of it and how it impacted me.
Right.
I've taken the pursuit of being less of a victim.
Right.
Rather, the why me? Why me? Well,
Right.
it happened, and actually probably for the better.
Right.
So I'm very at ease with that aspect in my life.
Yeah.
Maturity too.
Well, that's interesting. As we get older, right, we learn these lessons, and we slowly, hopefully, you put things in proper perspective, and yeah, so the wisdom of myself now, what a gift that would be to have that back when you're 18, 19, 16,
Yes.
22. You would just you'd be Paul Rudd. You know why I say that? Can I tell you why I said that? There's a reason why I said that. I actually, I met a girl, she was an actress, and she said her life kind of went down this wrong path as far as, like, she got married to a doctor, and the doctor they just didn't get along, and then she's divorced, and she decided to get back into acting. And she said, I think it was Kansas City or St. Louis, but she's like, I was in acting school with Paul Rudd, and before he became famous. And he was like the most easygoing guy. And, not like you say, nothing's where I'm a victim. He had no complaints about anything. He was like, come on, man, this is like, you're going to quit acting? How can you do that? This is like the coolest thing, like he just had that healthy, positive attitude that we just didn't have. Right. And so she says, I think about that all the time. And she goes, yes, of course, it all worked out for him because he had that attitude where he was just like, it's just all good, dude. Like, how could you complain? So your mom loves you unconditionally. How cool was that? Like that kind of a thing from Paul Rudd. So, yeah. So, yeah, if we had, he seems like he had the right attitude. I don't know why we're talking about Paul Rudd, other than it made me think of how she said he just had the healthiest, most laid back attitude, and you could see why every environment he went into, it just worked for him.
I love that narrative. I think it's a great narrative because it's so easy to get caught up and snowballed
Right.
underneath all of the extraneous stuff in our lives that cause so much friction and tension. Okay, so let me ask you this.
Okay.
When you have painted this image of yourself of being younger and not conforming to an identity, I think there are people listening to this podcast that might be thinking, Jesus, was Jonathan a total rebel? Did he get in a lot of trouble?
I I I I got into trouble to make friends laugh. I didn't get anything heavy or dark or anything like that. No.
Okay.
I kind of really wasn't that rebel, but I did move away when I was like early 20s. I just, went to Los Angeles. But I wasn't a troublemaker. I wasn't beating anybody up or getting in trouble with the law or yeah. So no, I wouldn't. But it's funny. One of the things that in my this occupation I used to do, where I used to document, as I kept getting older and documenting musicians, they kept getting younger and I kept getting older, some of them. And so I would see new generations coming through. And of course, music plays such an important role in the early 20s, in your teens. And so all that philosophy was up at the surface when you're in that music environment. And I saw I saw the biggest when I went out on the Warp Tour, and I was hired to do the 10-year anniversary of the Warp Tour, and these kids were all like 20 years younger than me. I was like, wow, when I was their age, we were you could see it in the 80s movies, right? It was always about the rebel, and you were ready to punch out the guy, and and, why was the villain always a blonde with his shirt collar up, right? But it was all about like, yeah, man, you were ready to punch something out because you were a rebel. And then like, you go to the next generation coming up, not the next, but maybe whatever 20-year difference would be. I guess that might be the next generation, but they were just so like not just like no fight in them, like, just easygoing. Yeah, sure, whatever, man. Like just what's the word? Not lethargic, but apathetic.
Apathetic.
Am I saying is that the word? Yeah.
Sure. Apathy. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually asked one of the musicians that. I was like, it feels like your generation is more apathetic. And he said, I don't know. Which would be an apathetic answer, right?
I wonder what Paul Rudd would say to that one.
I have a feeling he would work across all the generations. You could drop him into the, turn of the century and he'd be like, come on, man, we got to go to this speakeasy, like whatever.
So you'd mentioned the M word, music. For
Yes.
me, the explosion of music in my life really happened right around 84, 85, 86. I'm talking Howard Jones, Thompson Twins, the Chameleons. We had a great station up here, Live 105, alternative rock.
Yeah.
And late 80s, my head just exploded. And of course, Nine Inch Nails is going to come into that a little bit later. So for you, Jonathan, take us back to the kind of that moment of musical history in your life.
Those years?
Sure.
Well, that's, if you go 84, 85, 86, I graduated from high school in 84. So, I remember like, Duran Duran, you know. I remember, this is odd. I just remember in my small little high school, there was like Team Prince and Team Bowie. You know, which is, which when you look back on it, is like, what? There was the Southern rock end could go, which was like all that, or there was the synthesizers and all that, you know. I had older brothers, so I was, as you do when you have older brothers, you have that knowledgeable, so they were into like, you know, Santana, Eric Clapton, The Doors, The Beatles, Rolling Stones. And then like the kids in my high school were into like the AC/DC and the Van Halen and all that. And, yeah, interesting. 84, 85, 86. You know, I was in college in 85, 86. And while I was in college, just by weird I just happened to be living above a kid that was working for the concert promoter in Pittsburgh. And I started to do PA jobs for that concert promoter. And so that started to skew the music I was kind of listening to and hanging out with. So in that scenario, I was instantly thrown into, not a fan, but instantly working shows where it was the the hair band days, like the, you know, yeah. The first big concert I worked was Def Leppard, you know, and then Monsters of Rock and Van Halen and Scorpions, and then all that stuff started coming through, like Motley Crue, Tesla, you know, who else was the big?
Oh my God, we could spend 3 hours on this. Bon Jovi.
Yeah. A lot of Italian girls went that route, you know. It was the whole thing.
White Snake.
Great White. It was all about that. And then, but then, as you would, working for the big concert promoter, you also, everything from Throbbing Gristle came through, to Pink Floyd, to jazz artists. So I was experiencing all that from inside as working with the concert promoter. And I was the guy that started to, they trusted me with like going to pick up the artist at the airport, or take them to the radio station, set up the dressing room. I guess, again, I had no identity, so I could fit in. I knew how to kind of morph and almost a chameleon and say, okay, I'm with these guys right now. So, you know, just kind of learn how to just be quiet and just sort of fit in and be easygoing. I picked up Jeff Beck and Terry Bozzio at the airport and drove 1 hour with all three of us in the car. No one said a word. You know, I'm reading their energy. Yeah, that played a role to not be attached to any kind of identity. I didn't feel uncomfortable being around artists that I was not interested in, because again, I'm not attached to anything that would be so judgmental about who they're being because, they're free to be whoever they want to be. And yeah, I wasn't attached to any of that stuff. So I was easily could hang with different environments and not feel like get me out of here kind of thing.
You mentioned that being silent was a skill that you learned.
Yeah.
Whilst being around some really globally well-known people.
Yeah.
What other skills did you acquire from that experience that you feel serve you well today as an artist?
Let's see. Well, first of all, it would have to resonate with you. So it's not so much learning from them as relating to them.
Okay.
Like if anything, there's maybe you are learning that, hey, you can go ahead and do that because there's no rules. So maybe, yeah, I guess you do learn, but it's resonating with you. I'll give you two quick stories that I think you'll find interesting. The first one is it kind of relates to you learn these skill sets of like when to be quiet, when to film, when not to film. So I was out with Nine Inch Nails. We were doing I was with them for 2.5 years. It was 5 band members, a bodyguard, a tour manager, and myself. So, 2.5 years, just the 7 or 8 of us is pretty intense. And then when we got towards the end of the tour, the Self-Destruct tour, it was just like everyone had run the marathon and didn't plan for the last, so many miles. And it was like, Trent said, let's sprint to the finish line. And we went back to the clubs and they hit the clubs as hard as you can hit the clubs. Like those shows were insane. And it was like, they would do that on a regular basis where at the end of the show and you'd go into the dressing room and they were just spent, right? Their eyes were glossy and it just looks like somebody just ran a marathon and they were just spent. And some of my photographs represent that. The tour itself was like that. They were just spent at the end. And then you get the phone call from David Bowie saying, I'd like to go tour with you. So
you got to do it.
Oh, yeah, you can't turn that down, right? So I think we had maybe a month off in New Orleans. And so Trent and everybody went out with David, and it started up in Boston, I think. And I didn't go right away. I had to get all my footage in line or something. And there was a decision for me to miss the practice, the rehearsals, and then join them like 3 shows in, right? And it happened to be Pittsburgh. So, and it happened to be, remember, I used to work for the concert promoter, right? So here I am, I'm flying into Pittsburgh. I land, I get picked up by that PA, that runner that I used to do and pick up all the people from the airport. And I get there, I go to the production office. I see the tour manager. He gives me my laminate. I take the picture. They laminate my laminate and they say, they just finished their sound check. This is in Pittsburgh. Go ahead out. Everybody's in catering. And, so I got my laminate. I headed out into catering. Catering's packed. And there's like one seat open. And it's next to Trent. And I'm like, oh, that's my tribe right there, right? That's who I travel with. So I'm going to go sit next to Trent. But then I look and I see that David Bowie's sitting across from the empty seat. So, nobody would sit in front of David Bowie, right? And so I'm like, those skills that you learn is like, I can't land, get my credentials, and then I'm instantly sitting in front of David Bowie. I can't do that. Like, I have to like slowly wander into his world. I have to be introduced by, here's Coco. She's Bowie's handler. Hi, Coco. David doesn't like if you film him here. Let me introduce you to David, that sort of thing. And I'm like, I just can't go sit down in front of David Bowie for dinner. I just can't do that. Like, I can't go get my tray with my food and go over and sit down in catering in front of David Bowie. That's not comfortable. Like, that's not how he should meet me. And then I'm like, there's no seats. And I'm like, well, Trent is my friend. And it's, there's Trent is the seat next to him. So you also try to treat them like people, right? You can't, no one's sitting across from David Bowie. That's not treating him like a normal person. Everyone's literally afraid to sit in front of David Bowie. So, so I'm like, well, this is literally naturally, I would go sit next to Trent. So I'm like, I'll go sit next to Trent, which happens to be in front of David Bowie. So I sit down and they're talking and I hear the conversation and David Bowie's talking about Andy Warhol. And he's telling Andy Warhol stories because Andy Warhol's from Pittsburgh. And I'm like, I have a great Andy Warhol story. And I'm like, I can't now sit down in front of David Bowie and then tell him my Andy Warhol story. It's just too much, right?
You got to do it. You got to do it.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I thought, okay, I said, I'm actually from Pittsburgh and I have a great Andy Warhol story. And then, David looks over at me and he's like, oh, I'd love to hear it, and I'd say, well, when I went to college here and when I was in college, I would take on some catering jobs on the weekend. And one of them was there was this, Andy Warhol estate was donating the real famous Marilyn Monroe for a lobby of a skyscraper they just built in Pittsburgh. And it was going to be donated for the lobby. And that's what the event was. And so I was there in bow tie, in white shirt, handing out hors d'oeuvres. And I'm like standing off in the corner, kind of not doing my job. I'm supposed to be walking around, but I had to take a break. And I was just like standing in the corner in the dark. And there's a dude over there in the corner eating like cheese and crackers. And he just, looked like nobody. And he looked like he didn't fit in. And I said, oh, what brings you here? And he goes, Andy was my brother. And I'm like, Andy Warhol was your brother? And so you're going to love this part. And David actually loved this part because you love reading these quotes and things like that. And, these inspirational characters. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to get the scoop. I'm going to get the scoop on what Andy Warhol was like. So I asked Andy Warhol's brother, who's a steel mill worker, I say, what was your brother like? And he says, Andy was weird. And that's it. He's just weird. Andy was weird. And I was like, yeah, of course, right? To the steel mill worker brother. Like, what was I going to get? Like some well, he was really doing French philosophy inside of futuristic, whatever. Of course, he was just so David actually really got a kick out of that. And so that's how I met David. I just, I maneuvered through those waters that I knew better to travel into. The other quick story well, now I can't even think of the other one. You were asking me a question. You asked me about what skills you learned. Oh, okay. So the other story relates to David Lynch. You asked me how being around these artists, did it affect your art? And so I'm in the recording studio down in New Orleans and I'm working on all this footage for this documentary called Closure. Yep. And I'm putting together I've got my footage. I have 500 hours of, 2.5 years and I got to get it down to prime real estate of only 90 minutes of 500 hours. And I'm kind of working on the end of it and I'm kind of not sure how to end it. Right. And so I thought, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go downstairs and David Lynch and Trent Reznor are in Studio A in the recording room. And I'm going to lay on the couch, which is behind all the equipment. Like, it's hard to explain. You could lay on the couch and just listen to them work. They can't see you because they're sitting in a chair behind all the equipment. But the couch was kind of like on the other side of the equipment. And I'm just going to lay there and I'm going to listen to them work, David Lynch and Trent Reznor, and I'm going to be so inspired, right? And I just laid on the couch and I heard them talking and David Lynch was explaining, what he thought the sounds, he was visually describing the sounds to Trent. And that was a trip. And in typical David Lynch fashion. And it just something made me relax. And I thought, just dude, you're overthinking this. Like you listen to these two titans of, their industry. And I was like, it's such ease. Like just relax, just stop overthinking this. And then I thought, it just came to me and I thought, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to take all that old Super 8 footage I have that I don't know what to do with.
Yep.
And I'm going to make a collage at the end and I'm going to pick a song off of either a remix or one of the songs off the album. But from that album, something somber, almost like empty, sort of depressing. And that's how I'm going to end it. And I was 100% inspired by David Lynch and Trent. And I took advantage of that energy and I just was present with it. And I thought, just relax and something's going to come to you. So I think being around that energy, which is a gift, and you're lucky to be around such talented people, just be open to it and let it kind of connect to you in whatever way that connects. And it did. I remember thinking, well, why can't I take all that Super 8 footage with no sound and it kind of moves a little fast and and it's black and white and it's color, but saturated and wrong. And something seems archival and put that, I think it was a remix song. I can't remember now. Either it was a remix or one of the real kind of somber, quiet songs on the album. And I found that last frame and I froze on it. And it's Trent. He kind of tosses the keyboard to the side. And as he's walking off stage, I just freeze the image and then I fade it to black. And then, to have somebody like Rick Rubin so many years later find out that I did that documentary and tell me that he loved the ending, it makes sense. It's all from that energy, So I hope that answers that question of, what did you learn from their talents, I guess is.
Okay. Thank you. Well stated,
You're welcome.
articulated. And I love how this is all kind of threading together. At this portion of the conversation, we're going to get into the belly of your work. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay. Now, because you are a very reflective, introspective person, I want to try something with you here. So bear with me, go with me, and I'll explain. Well, there's a gentleman, an actor you may know of, not Paul Rudd. His name is Ethan Hawke. And Ethan wrote a great book called Rules for a Night, basically writing it for his children. Wisdom. Okay. I'm going to read something to you from this little green book. And there are stories in here that take on the persona, the identity of a knight. Here we go. This part is about courage. Courage. Anything that gives light must endure burning. Courage is our ability and willingness to overcome our fear. Fear is nothing to be ashamed of. It is a powerful resource, reminding us to be wary, alert, and mindful. Fear is the dark, and courage is the light. Fear is the call, and courage is the answer. Mm. When struggling to find his courage, a knight relies on his breath. Okay, so here's my first question with regards to your work and the work that you have been doing, quality work. Talk to us about the duality of fear and courage and how those have ping-ponged back and forth in your career in any way that you want to share.
Interesting. I like that. I appreciate the way you approach interviews. It's really cool and refreshing, and I'm enjoying this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I could tell as soon as we started I met you, I could see that this is going to be really cool.
Thank you.
Well, there's a couple ways to do this. One, to kind of relate it to the photography for a second. At first, I was a little dysfunctional because I was letting fear get in the way. And so I just wasn't having fun with it and playing with it at a level that, so I, I guess you could say, what was the fear? I'm not sure. I don't know what the fear was. I guess you gotta be, it's kind of not my nature to, I guess to exaggerate that would be the paparazzi guy. And that's so not me, and obviously not many, but that's exaggerating it. Like, I'm going to get this shot and I don't care what you think, and I'm going to invade your space and I'm going to get it even if you don't want me to get it. Like, that's like a zone that you just, that has nothing to do with, anything that you're doing. So you had to get that out of your head, that, you know, you have a job to do, and you can't worry about how people are judging you, because they can judge you all they want. And you don't want to do anything where you're offending. But I was so, like, afraid to walk into a room and just take the picture, and but I guess the courage of that is, you have to just say to yourself that what you're doing is you're offering a service for them that they're going to really appreciate down the road. And you just have to have that courage, and to just know that you might look like an odd character taking a photo now, but later on it's going to be like a fine wine that just ages well. If you're lucky, if you get a subject that's relevant 30 years later, which I was lucky to get. That's speaking to those specific photographs. The quick little story in there, because I like to throw these little stories in for you,
Yeah.
is so David Bowie's handler, Coco,
Coco.
when I did everything backwards and I met Coco after I met David. So I said to her, she said to me, David, you can take any photo you want of David on stage, but anything backstage, you just ask for my permission.
Sure.
And I was like, sure. So when we ended up in Madison Square Garden, I was kind of cruising around in the hallways before sound check or after sound check. And I think we had like 3 shows at Madison Square Garden or something with David Bowie. And I turned the corner, I had my camera in my hand, and there was, in the hallway, in the back hallways of Madison Square Garden, there was, Trent Reznor, David Bowie, Iggy Pop, Lou Reed, Marilyn Manson. There was like, it was like, you remember Random Notes from Rolling Stone magazine? I was like, this is like the greatest random note photograph that anybody could produce, right? This is pre-Photoshop, so I didn't even have to think about, somebody thinks I've Photoshopped all these people together. And I ran over to the production office and I said to Coco, I was like, Coco, is that David Bowie, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop? She's like, go, 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 and I turned the corner, and as soon as I turned the corner, they dispersed. So I learned,
Oh.
yeah. So I learned, I guess you could say, you have to have that courage in the face of somebody telling you no. You take the photo and then get permission later. It's like, you know, again, because you have to say to yourself, I'm doing something that's a service for you, and just trust me on this. Yeah. So
But you,
that would, yeah,
sorry to interrupt,
no,
but see, this is what I love about these stories. They're obviously very entertaining stories, but they're little kernels, they're little nuggets to
right,
the listeners
right.
that you're providing based on your wonderful ability to reflect. So with these stories that you kind of look back and smile and go, oh shit. But with each one of these little episodes, you've grown from these things and applied
You
it.
do. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I learned that Andy Warhol's weird. I'm just kidding. No, you're absolutely right. I You're absolutely right. And so to now take that question to like a much bigger scale in my life, even right now, I really got interested in the feature, writing and directing feature films. And so the fear there is that it's so hard to do that. It's it's almost impossible to get scripts looked at and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not an easy avenue to go down at all, unless you're connected and you have many under your belt and things like that. And even those guys struggle to get funding. I mean, even it's so crazy at a level that I remember like reading that like even Francis Ford Coppola had to personally finance Heart of Darkness or something, right? Because they didn't want to fund it. And if you think about that, he did The Godfather. That's like insane.
It is insane, and he's still funding these films that you'd think he's Francis Ford Coppola. And I want to get your opinion on how stupid I was. Here we go.
Okay.
This past summer in August, I was driving from Lake Tahoe back to the Bay Area. My older brother and my younger brother, we were going to go see 9 Inch Nails in Oakland for this recent tour. We were driving back on the day of that tour. I've seen 9 Inch Nails many, many times. I decided to pass. I know. Later that night, my younger brother, Chris, sends me a text with a photo of him with great seats inside the Oakland Arena. And he literally says this: best fucking concert I've ever seen. And
Has he seen more than one concert?
he has seen many, and he has seen many 9 Inch Nails concerts. And I gave him a middle finger, meaning I'm very happy for him. So here's my question, Jonathan. Did you see NIN on this recent tour? And if you did, your opinions.
I did. I saw them more than once. I didn't go to work or anything. I just went to enjoy the show. I had different seats at different times. Truly incredible. Absolutely spectacular. And I'm, obviously very familiar with the Self-Destruct tour, which is a high bar to pass. And being an official net show, I saw every show on that tour, every single show. I was out front filming or on the stage. Yeah, I was genuinely blown away, and Trent sounded incredible. His voice sounded incredible. He looked incredible. He looked great. The stage design was phenomenal. It reminded me of the next level of concert performance because there were basically two stages. There was a B stage and the main stage, but the B stage, a lot of times artists will have that kind of that walk runway all the way out to the middle and then you go back. But his was separated and it just looked ominous. They used the whole arena to light it. It just was extravaganza. I mean, and I don't know if you recall, but I did the concept design for Self-Destruct tour stage design. Concept only, and then they had a different art designer come in and, make it reality, but especially in the lighting and all that. But I was just really impressed. I really, truly was impressed. Yeah.
So you were echoing.
You missed out.
What did you say?
So you missed out, Williams.
I can flip off my brother. I won't flip you off.
Okay.
So you echoed what my brother had shared and my best friend who had seen NIN in Seattle for the Peel It Back tour.
Yeah.
Before we get off this stage of the conversation, I will add one more thing with regards to this show that I heard. The set list. the way it flowed, the energy that was propulsing. I know Trent and company spends a lot of time putting together these shows. But this is from time and time again. I heard the set list was just extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah. And from what I understand, they had kind of put a lot of effort into learning, many songs. And so that they had the freedom to kind of pull one up at any time. But they kind of sort of, from what I experienced, they sort of stuck to a core set list. And I was surprised at how much of it was the self-destruct from the downward spiral. Not complaining. I mean, it was great and it made sense. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The B stage had a certain vibe that was different from the main stage. It felt, if I mean, just to recall the best I can recall, it was like very stripped down on the B stage. It opened with the B stage. Literally, the quietest moment started the show, just a voice and a little bit of piano. And then it sort of built from there. And a lot of remixes on the B stage, a lot of keyboard action on the B stage. The B stage had its own vibe that they complemented each other, but it definitely felt like acts, like act 1, act 2, act 3, act 4. And in a way that worked, and it was exciting. It just literally, I found myself on the edge of my seat, like, and I know all those songs so well. I just kept waiting to see what's next. And then in those songs, I was feeling his performance, his energy, like you said, his passion. It just felt very on point. It felt intelligent. I think that's one of the things I respect about their shows is there's an intelligence about it, that I think the audiences really appreciate that. That they're not like looked down on, He just really values everybody's time and his time, and he wasn't going to do anything unless it was, really executed well and deserving. And so hats off. Yeah. You messed up, William. You should have saw.
All the listeners that cannot see me now and how red I am.
Yeah. The fun conversation is, what did you do instead? Did you like watch TV? Did you organize your clothes?
I drowned in my sorrows.
I'm limited by time, by gravity, by all these physical forces.
You'd mentioned designing the aesthetics.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that and the planning and the collaboration and the communication that takes to pull that off?
Well, I can speak, of the self-destruct environment in full. I don't know much how this particular design came about. I did hear it was a collaboration of different designers and different producers, and obviously Trent's always involved. The self-destruct was, again, I didn't witness how this one came together, but I know the self-destruct, as you know, you kind of like, it's, how it is. Anything you do that involves a big crew of people, there's always somebody that sort of drops the ball a little bit, and you have to kind of go back, roll up your sleeves, lose a night of sleep, spend the time to sit there with the designers. And then as you're going, you kind of work the kinks out. So like the first show, I would imagine, evolved into what the last show was, probably a little more sophisticated and maybe more, intense or tight. It was right there. It's just a little bit of a work in progress. The light designers, as every night goes, they kind of learn to tweak some things. But Trent's very hands-on. Trent's, it's not like, I've been out with artists that I don't even think they even know what the light show looks like. They come up with something and then they just go on the stage. But with Trent, it's part of the whole expression for sure. And it shows.
So conceptually, with the design in mind, are you sketching things out and sharing drafts with Trent and the company? Or does Trent say, okay, work on it, show me your final draft, and we'll discuss?
With the Self-Destruct, I actually, I lucked out in the sense that I presented the drawings to Trent and I didn't go through management or anything. I just presented them to him. And if I would have went through management, they probably would have said, well, we already have a designer. And they did. But from what I understand, Trent wasn't fully excited about it because it had a little bit of an industrial predictability, industrial look to it or something. And then I was just sort of coming from this background of like, I had studied stage designs for like 3 years and saw what everybody was doing and came out, like you said, you take notes, you think, oh, that was interesting. This is cool. And then you think of like, what's 9 Inch Nails? What's my feeling of them? And so I just literally pencil sketched it and I showed Trent, and Trent was, he was intrigued by it. He loved the initial look of the sketch, and he started asking me questions like, what's this? What's that? And some of it I didn't even think through, but as he was asking me, I just was like, what is that then? And I just gave an answer. And, one of them kind of an interesting note was he asked me what's the backdrop. And I said, it's like rubber with sutures all through it, like a skin that's been sutured up. I said that right on the spot, cause you could tell it was a drape of some sort in the back. So when they did do the design, they actually made it rubber. And don't ever make a backdrop out of rubber. It was twice as heavy. It ripped easily. And then surprisingly, at some point, a fire marshal finally asked, at one of the venues, deep into the process, one of them says, what's the backdrop made out of? And we were like, rubber. And he's like, oh no. So that was replaced with some other synthetic that wasn't rubber and that was fireproof and didn't tear like a paper towel or something. But yeah, it was made out of untraditional materials. It was wood. It was a really fun, cool process to see my sketch become the size of an arena, inside an arena eventually. Yeah. So it was a very cool experience. And then the opera gauze, which they used opera gauze again on this one where they made a cube out of the opera gauze, which I thought was really cool. That was one of my favorite bullet points to that design. And the other one was the B stage was very vertical and it went up and down and there was a lot of lights that shot up and down. And so just that vertical, use of space, I thought was just really cool. It was like a column. It looked like, I know they didn't probably plan this, but it at times it felt a little bit like something you'd see in a Tron movie. You know what I mean? Like it tied in, and not in a cheesy way, but for me, it sort of tied into some futuristic column scaffold or something that was really cool.
Which is perfect because Tron movie comes out, a couple weeks?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. We could talk 9 Inch Nail shows all day. And yes, I'm still kicking myself.
Well, hopefully you have another opportunity.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Photography.
Only thing I've ever done
I want to talk about your beautiful new website, some images that were taken, but I want to read a quote to you from this wonderful book called Old School Photography.
Okay.
100 Things You Must Know to Take Fantastic Film Photos by Kai Wong. Here's the quote. Mistakes photographers make. The biggest mistake a photographer could make is to dwell on their mistakes. The next big mistake is thinking that they are mistakes. A real mistake is when a pro photographer messes up. For a beginner, it's all about the learning process. They are just blips on an otherwise upward trajectory. Experiences that should spur you on to make sure everything runs smoothly the next time. Mistakes. What are your thoughts on this quote here?
I mean, I certainly made a whole bunch in the beginning. Sometimes you can get a happy outcome from a mistake. But one thing that I noticed, and I really didn't have any, technical training, so maybe I was, my head wasn't full of so much technical stuff. I would just take a shot based on how it felt, just the feeling of it, and you definitely don't want to overthink it. And so when you're not overthinking, you really are letting more mistakes come in. You're not so gingerly with it, and you should have a whole bunch of errors in that. That's way better than overthinking it and then trying to get the perfect shot and missing many, including mistakes that are happy mistakes. So if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, the biggest mistake that you could make is not having the right equipment, I guess, because then you're limited. But if you can figure out what it is you're trying to capture and what your environment is and what it's dealing you, and you have to figure out how to get as much, mobility in that. That would be the one place that you can't go back and, it's just like you don't have the right equipment. You're not going to capture. Now, what is the right equipment? Low tech might be the right equipment, super high def might be the right equipment. So it's really, at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to the feel of it. And if you're true to the feel, then there are no mistakes. You know what I mean?
If you're true to the feel, there are no mistakes. Yes.
Right. The emotion of it. Yeah.
The essence as well.
Yeah.
Okay. That is very interesting because I've spoken to a few photographers and they've said the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the moment. It's the flavor. It's this vibe that they're trying to capture, whether it's $5,000 equipment or $500. And I want to also read something else here, and this is called Nailing the Decisive Moment from the same book. So he lists some strategies, some ideas. Pre-visualize, be prepared, be patient. More is more. We're so used to hearing less is more. So pre-visualize, be prepared, be patient, more is more. Speak to those, please.
The more is more, I think he's probably referring to just take as many photos, just really go for it. Because it's a photo. When you document, which is a different thing, which is rolling video, you have to be a little careful because if you could have too much going into the editing room and it could mess with budgets, but more importantly, just fatigue people out and it's not necessary. But with photography, these are just one-off shots. I mean, I would say get as many as you can, especially if your environment, you don't have control over the environment. You have to get as many as you can. If you have, with 9-inch nails, you don't have control of where he's going to stand, what the lighting is. You just have control of nothing. So you just have to really just keep hitting it from all kind of angles and moments. And I do know, like I've tried where you can just go boom, 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 boom. I don't find that valuable. you can do a bunch, but then you have to breathe in between there. I don't think it's just a game of like as many shots as you possibly can get in. I mean, that would become pretty cumbersome in the editing process. But I know if Trent's about to do something or the artist is about to do something that's a lot of motion and energy, you might want to go boom, 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 and then meaning, the whole time they're running around or something's happening, get as many off as you can with a little bit of understanding what they're going to capture when you're hitting the button. But if someone's just standing at the microphone, I mean, you can, if they're pretty much there, you don't need a lot. You just need to you might mess with space, you could mess with space or settings on on your camera. But yeah. So what were the other points that you mentioned? It was
being prepared, be patient, pre-visualize.
Yeah, I agree with all those. The pre-visualize one, I'm not really sure I'm familiar with that one. It's interesting that it's mentioned and it's something to think about, but I guess the pre-visualizing would, for me, when I hear that, I would think that helps you figure out your equipment and things like that. But as far as having an image in your mind, I've never done that. Like I never went out to seek that sort of visual in my mind. I've just let it speak to me. But I know in filmmaking, documentary making, you should have a little bit of preconceived imagery and then go find it. If you're trying to tell a certain story. I'll add this to what you're saying here. I've noticed that the photographers now, because everybody has a camera and they're really high quality, even on the iPhone, and they don't stop anybody from not bringing their phones in. I really find, I was looking at the 9 Inch Nails photography that from amateurs to professionals, and I was like, wow, there's a really, new set of photographers that are just really thinking outside of the box, creating not just the subject, but the environment and the subject, backgrounds, scale, spatial, and then weird lighting imperfections. It's really been a rich field of images that have been produced. It's really cool.
It is cool. And I imagine for someone like with your talent and the work that you have done in taking these amazing indelible images, I imagine for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, because you take your craft so seriously, like Trent, it must be a painstaking process to do all that work. And then you go, okay, now I have to pick this one. I have to pick this one, because you're probably very aware of your work and you want to produce and present the best foot forward. Yeah.
I actually enjoy the whittling down process. I really enjoy it because honestly, William, that's the medium. It's the moment. You are getting to the moment, where in documentary is many moments. Then that becomes a little bit of a laborsome. There's a phrase that editors, I don't know if they use it anymore, but I remember hearing it back in the day. You have to kill your babies. Like you can only pick so many of your children. It's a horrible way to look at it, but so yeah, Sophie's choice kind of thing, right? But with photography, I think it is about only picking one, that's gonna. So what I do is I'll go through, and then if it's just slightly, I find there's something there, I'll hold on to it, and then I'll have that folder, and then I'll make a selects from that folder, and then I'll do selects from the next folder, then the selects of the selects of the selects from the selects, and I'm sure that a couple good ones get lost in that process, but you can always go back, after some time has passed and go say, what did I pass up, But when you do it that way, you really kind of get down to like the 5 that keep passing the judges and keep getting moved to the next level. And there must be something there for that. But then sometimes you go back and look at round one of something you turned down. And now, because you've been looking at those other ones so many times, that one looks fresh and exciting. And then, and it's a time consuming process. I'll say that I enjoy.
So once these are done and you feel like you're ready to hand over the goods, does Trent have the final say?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Like we did the Palladium series, and the concept there was there was like 5 shows, and I would take photographs the first night, and Trent and I together would pick one image to have for sale the next night that he signed in limited edition. So if you saw the show on Monday and you're willing to go back to the venue and go to the merchandise, which was outside the venue, so you didn't have to actually buy another ticket, you could go and buy whatever image that Trent and I came up with, or I came up with. And that image was the night I was at the show, which is kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
So if you were there Monday night and you bought Monday night's image, you can say, well, that's Trent. I was in the audience there, or something like that, which is really cool. I was actually surprised how many people have circled back to say, I want the night I was there, which was the 15th or the 16th or something. So it played a big role.
The turnaround on that's got to be so fast and furious.
It was, and then they had to print them all up. They had to have 100. So I worked with Sammy's Cameras in Los Angeles, and Roger was the artist over there that was, figuring out the coloring and all that, and for me to approve. And he and I think completely alike, and so he just always nails it. Like he just really gets it the way that I never have to say, oh, I don't know about that, but he's a very important part of the process. And then he would get that image at like 7 a.m. and then he had to go to work and have it all ready by, I think it was 1 p.m. so that they can put it in the sleeves and everything, and then get it over to the venue and put prices. Yeah, it was crazy.
Okay, to all the podcast listeners right now, I want you to do me a favor. Whilst listening to this conversation with Jonathan, I want you to go to his website, and it's jonathanrach.com. And what we're going to do is we're going to provide some time for Jonathan to talk about a few photos, ones that I've picked out, and he can give us a little bit backstory. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great. Okay. Before we talk about any of these photos, I do want you to tell the listeners and me, what are your strengths as a photographer? What are you proud of?
Being sensitive to the emotions of it all. I'm really, almost to a fault, I'm just looking at the emotions of it. Yeah, I'm like ignoring everything else. I think that yields some great photos when you can drown everything else out and just feel it and just go with the emotion of it. It's easy to do, maybe more so in photography than it is like playing an instrument. I had a very world famous guitar player known as one of the best. He was telling me, like, once you start thinking about guitar playing, you've lost the plot. You can't think. You have to feel. And, there's a time and place for thinking, but it's not in the moment. It's definitely not in the moment. So more so for a musician than a photographer. But yeah, I would say that comes naturally to me. I'm always like about the feel of it, and I don't go too deep where I miss the plot. Or the initial expression or the initial feeling of it is what I try to stay true to.
So good. So good. I'm loving this. Okay. Let's talk about some of your work here. And if you want to provide some analysis, perspective, backstory, that would be awesome. All right. The first one I want to talk about is actually on the website. It's R301. And it is of Trent. It's like a silhouette. And he's kind of hunched over like this, holding the microphone. Like he's just undergone this transcended experience with the audience. Not sure.
That's the one that's very contrast, right? Black and white. Oh, yeah, that's it. Yep.
Love it. I think it's so simple, but yet powerful. So tell us about this one.
This is, you might find this interesting. And this is one of those things that you were talking about earlier, that mistakes are not necessarily sometimes mistakes. When I first saw that, I thought, oh, that looks like a graphic design. It was missing all the details, right? And I didn't think much of it. And when I showed Trent that, he led on that was one of his favorites. And so I paid attention to it. I was like, what am I not seeing in that image that everyone's seeing? And I guess it's growing on me because so many people respond to it. And it's pretty pure in its moment. You can't get any purer than that. And that I start to appreciate, and I start to see the value of it in that. It's as black and white as you can get.
Yes. And
I want to add, William, that this is before digital or, Photoshop. That's it. That was what came out. All those images from Self-Destruct, that I just snap the image and then you get it back. That's it. There's no tweaking with it whatsoever. That's what you get. There's no digital. There's no manipulation. That's it. So
there's no AI. That's for a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother, yeah.
Okay, here's another one. Love this one. This is of Trent and Robin together, and they're both kind of singing into the mic. And what I love about this one, to me, it's about collaboration, teamwork. And I never spoken to Trent in my life, but I imagine that is extremely important for him.
Yes. That image is when you can get that sort of that image when you stand not parallel. You stand in line with the microphones.
Yes.
And I do that. I discovered that when I was documenting in video. And what happens is if you just stay focused on the microphones, the artists come up and go back and come up and go up. And so they're all like, it's like a trough. They're all coming up to do something and then they come back and your camera. So I was like, I wonder what I can capture just with still photography. If I just stand and line myself up to the microphones and just keep taking shots as they come up to the microphones. And you would get a couple and you're right, that perspective shows you the collaboration. And that's it, from my experience. I'm not a musician, but from documenting and being around it on the stage and having, some privileges to be so close to the nucleus of it all, they are very in tune with one another. There's an energy going on that's pretty, I think that you can feel or see or experience in the audience. It's something's happening between the artists too that adds to everything, But Trent's, yeah, I mean, he's very big on all of that, collaboration.
It always bothered me when people spoke of 9 Inch Nails really about Trent Reznor. And yes, he deserves so much credit. But the people that he has surrounded himself with, the sum of those parts, to me, when I listen to an album, when I go see a 9 Inch Nails shows, I'm watching a whole team experience put forth their best effort.
I would put it this way.
Okay.
A director has a vision, but he is incapable of communicating it with all those professionals and all that they do. So So there's in one, I'm using examples here in another sort of format of expression. So I think when you're talking a live performance specifically, you're talking in the film world, you'd be talking during production. So, that has nothing to do with the writing of it or any of that. The writing is very personal. That's couldn't be a one person in a room writing. Very, very in music, rarely. I mean, probably equal amounts of collaboration and just solo, right? So, but when you go to perform it live, you're now like as a director has to rely on, the director of photography, the lighting, the props, the wardrobe, the actors, that's all happening all at once. And so the collaboration is extremely important at that point. And, obviously Trent surrounds himself with like amazing musicians, and in the film world, then it becomes back down to maybe one person in the editing room because so you're back down to that final. So you can almost look at that arc of expression in live concerts. Trent's going to be in his own world writing everything with some collaboration and arrangement. And then he's going to be in his own world again with how he sort of sees it initially, and then collaboration with set designers and stage designers and lighting directors. And then he's like a director, they look to you for your final take on the vision. So it's singular in that aspect. It's like, what do you think, Trent? What do you think of this vision that we're creating? And here's my vision. Give me some examples to pick from, or, so it's kind of a weaving in and out of collaboration, solo. I mean, how exciting, right? Like what an exciting, just solo. I always thought painting was such a solo thing, you just sit there and paint in your studio. I mean, you could get lost in listening to the music, but, and I love it. I mean, I've done that, but I'm just kidding. Sorry, I pointed to a painting behind me. Actually, my mom did that. My mom painted that. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So I love that, being able to do both. And of course, the privileged position is the director or the artist, that everybody's working towards that person's vision. And those are really privileged positions, that people really earn. You just don't get handed those jobs, you really earn them.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to repeat the process.
And you're so good at articulating your ideas and thoughts and opinions, and I really appreciate it. Before you go, I want to do one more. I really want to respect your time here. This is R219, and another reason why I'm kicking myself, I never saw David Bowie in concert. And I love the lighting. I love the hues here.
Yeah.
Tell us about Mr. Bowie and capturing this essence and how it relates to Nine Inch Nails.
So that image, the reason why I chose that one was because he's locked eyes with the camera. And that's always, to me, makes it a little more special when he's looking at the viewer. The coloring in that, I agree with you. Again, this is pre-Photoshop. I just got those colors back and I was just like, oh, this is so good. The coloring this is a gift. I mean, it was like Bowie was dressed to get those colors. You know what I mean? He was in like a cream, and it just really works. How he, at that time, again, I can only speak of that, at how he fit into how they're both of their worlds fit together was, first of all, I have to always mention that, we're touring, and then all of a sudden people like Lou Reed are coming in the dressing room and just complimenting us. When I say us, them, a group, all the musicians on tour, the show that's putting on. And then all of a sudden, David Bowie's reaching out and saying, I want to co-line and tour with you. It's like, Trent was like, what? It's just more than you can imagine. And then I think, I don't know this for sure. I've never heard him say this in an interview, or I never heard him saying this when we're all hanging out. But I think what Trent was doing sort of lined up with what David was doing at that time. And it was a little bit of a dystopian outlook. And, you're talking sort of the early 90s, mid 90s, and Bowie was that was what he was feeling. And he looked out into the landscape and saw that Trent was, he's speaking just like me right now. Like the two of us are kind of syncing up. I'm assuming, right? I don't know for sure.
Sure.
But I do know that he was, he definitely, obviously David Bowie has his own voice and his own mind. And the two at that time were kind of in sync with one another. And I think Trent brought the younger crowd, and Bowie brought obviously all that respect. And it was such an amazing shows. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And that was one that I wish somebody, we filmed it, we documented it. And I also documented for David, and he has it somewhere, they have it archived. But I wish somebody would put out, just the concert of that. It would be so good. It would be so good. Yeah.
I could talk to you so many more images here. However, time is of the essence. Tell us what's coming down the line for you. Any exhibitions? Anything else you want to share?
So Stephen Delamar, he has the Behind the Gallery, and he always comes to me with exhibition ideas. I know that, he wants to do more, so I'm excited to see what he comes up with. And it's always so much fun to meet everybody, and everybody's just so like the fans that come out, the Nine Inch Nails fans that come out, and it creates a community where they get to see each other as opposed to just being online. It's a real world interaction, and it's just so cool. And everybody just gets along because they all have that in common. Yeah, I'm excited. I always wait. Nothing planned at the moment, but waiting to hear from him. And then, of course, I keep getting people telling me to do a book of some sort. So I've been sort of thinking in that direction, that maybe do something there. But when you interviewed me, this is part 2 of our interview. When you interviewed me the first time, I was so impressed with the way you interviewed me, and I'll tell you why. And to this day, I still talk about it. You so quickly got in so below the layer. You got in deep, quick and fast in such a cool way. I was mesmerized at how fast you got me to like talking about like, things that I've never talked to anybody about, like in my childhood. And I was like, how did he do that? Like tastefully too. So you're my favorite interview by far. And I just love your questions and your energy and your spacing. And I promise you, I'm not just saying this to, stroke an ego. I just genuinely, from the heart, really mean that. Yeah. So I just think you're great at what you're doing, and it really makes you think, and your questions are so they get you searching. So it's really good. I really appreciate it.
So now, for all the listeners, you heard me weep about not seeing NIN. I'm almost getting very choked up. Very authentic words, and I take them to my podcasting heart. And I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful that you would conjure up such complimentary words and sharing that with me. I think this is a good way to end.
Yeah.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. And everybody go check out Jonathan Rach's work on the website. It's a brand new website. It's gorgeous. It's easy to navigate. You'll get to see all these images, and you'll get links to videos. It's really well done. Do you want to give a shout out to the person who put that together?
Yeah, his name's Jordan. You can actually get all his detail at the bottom, and I highly recommend him. That's his concept. He came up with it. Yeah, it's a great, what he did was really good. Yeah, I highly recommend that. And then there's some friends links in there of more obscure artists that I thought would be really cool to share that I've met them. They're really sweet souls and they're great people. And so, really good, all good stuff.
I'm going to leave you with a quote, but this time you're not going to respond.
Okay.
Again, this comes from the book Old School Photography.
Okay.
Photography is a lonely hobby. The photo-taking process happens by yourself. It is up to you to develop your own style. You have to be critical about your own photos. And the closest relationship you will have with them, and the closest relationship you will have with anything when you're out taking photos is with your camera. My name is W. This has been a magnificent, heartfelt, thought-provoking conversation with Jonathan. And remember this, everyone. Great photography is all around us. You just have to keep your eyes open. Ciao.